Good afternoon and welcome to Virtual Group. My name is Michelle Faulkner. I'm one of the registered dietitians here at the Weight Management Center, and today we are going to be talking about how to avoid the pitfalls of portion distortion. Okay. So first we're going to do this in three parts. We're going to talk about larger servings in restaurants first. So just a little background on this. Portion distortion in restaurants began in the late 70s with the advent of more fast food places popping up and this new generation of cheaper, more convenient foods where you could pick up burger, fries, and a Coke for just pennies. And, kind of given the inexpensive nature of things like fries and a Coke, you could really supersize it for like pennies. And that's kind of where this whole concept of value sizes came in, and then value meals. So that's kind of, where that came from. And then history repeated itself like 20 years later with the fast casual dining experience in places like Applebee's, Chipotle, Boston Market. And as their, kind of popularity and rivalry grew, through the 90s, they tried to create this perception of value by offering more food for less money. So now it kind of spread into that sector. And then if we look at the second circle, where we talk about larger packages in grocery stores, the same thing that happened in restaurants began to happen in grocery stores, where we can see a wide variety of options with regard to the supermarket. So with the introduction of generic products, popular brands realized that they were going to be able to compete not through price wars, but through size wars. All right. I mean, I can remember as a kid, my mom shopping. This is going back to the Northeast, so they had a store called Pathmark. And I remember when the generics started coming out, and my mom would go crazy shopping for like, oh, look at these paper towels, and look at this, iced tea mix, and it was all so many dollars cheaper than the brand name, because up until then, that's what you bought was a brand name. Does anybody else remember anything like that, or have a little something to share with regard to that? Can everybody see me and hear me? If everybody could just kind of chime in and let me know, you can see me and you can hear me, that would be great. Ew. Okay. How about now? Everybody's good? You can see me and hear me? Yay. Okay. The technology challenge, once again, rises to the occasion. Okay. So does anybody else have a similar experience like that when, with generics or noticing any kind of, supersized value packaging that's in your supermarket? Anything that clicks with that? I just remember my mom went crazy and was buying everything generic, which back then was all in these ugly black and white package stuff. It was weird, but a lot of money was saved. All right, so lastly, I want to talk about circle number 3, which is the larger dishware in the homes and how that came to be. So, behind closed doors, there was also a revolution that was happening. And this had to do with plate, bowl, and glass size increasing tremendously, sometimes as much as 36%. And so what we ended up finding was happening, our assumptions of how much we need to eat and drink became much larger. So clearly, this is what helped lead to the whole portion distortion era that we find ourselves still living in at this point. So if you look at the transgression here, we went from, sadly, larger serving sizes in restaurants to then moving into the grocery stores and getting more bang for your buck through generic branding, to now coming back into our homes and having that drive for larger, more through our glasses, our bowls, and our plates. So it's kind of an insidious process. Next slide I want to show you here. Okay. This is just talking about how far we've come, which is not, in this case, not necessarily a good thing, with regard to portions and what a breakfast, lunch, and dinner out looked like 20 years ago and what it looks like now. So if you think about this for a moment, we all know that larger portions mean more calories, which can easily add up to extra weight. But if we take a look at what eating out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner looks like in today's portions, I really think that you're going to be a little shocked. So let's just go through this really quickly, okay? We've got breakfast. So we're talking about a 6-inch bagel, 16 ounces of coffee with milk and sugar. Lunch would be 2 slices of pepperoni pizza and a 20-ounce soda. And dinner would be a chicken Caesar salad and, again, another 20-ounce container of soda. So in one day, you consume 1,595 more calories than if you had the same foods at typical portions 20 years ago. Because the bagel size has increased, the soda size has increased, the sizes of pizza, the sizes of the salad, all has just been supersized. So we're talking about an increase now of almost 1,600 calories. And over the course of 1 year, if you multiplied that, and you consumed these kinds of meals daily for 1 year, it would equal over 500,000 extra calories, or 143 pounds. Just think about that. I mean, and there are many people who, just for pure convenience sake, eat out and eat a lot of meals out every single day. They eat out at least once a day. Some people may eat 2 or 3 meals most days of the week out, whether it's for business or it's pleasure. So, you think about that. I mean, is it any wonder that we have some of the weight and obesity issues and then the comorbidities that go along with that? So just something to think about. Okay, so let's talk about portion versus serving. I'm sure many of you have heard, this is a portion, this is what an appropriate portion is, or this is a serving size. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, what's the difference? I don't get it. So let's talk a little bit about that. A portion is technically how much food you choose to eat at any given time. And this is 100% under your control. Okay? A serving, however, is generally the amount of food listed on the nutrition facts label, and it generally tends to be a standardized unit of measure. So something like half a cup, 2 tablespoons, 1 slice, that kind of thing. Okay? Sometimes the portion and serving size is the same, and sometimes it's not. Portion sizes, as we know, have increased dramatically over the years, contributing to the obesity rate. Why do you think that understanding healthy portions can be difficult? I'd like you guys to chime in and give me your thoughts. Why do you think it's difficult for yourself or just people in general to understand healthy portions and what that is? Kathy, so we don't overeat. Well, for sure, but why do you think people have difficulty understanding that? Because clearly we do, right? I mean, people struggle with this all the time. Hey, I struggle with it sometimes too. I'm not going to lie to you. It can be challenging. The packaging, for sure. We've gotten used to large sizes and think it's the norm. Absolutely. And one of the things that we talk about here in the clinic is retraining your eye to what an appropriate portion is. And that's why a lot of time, we ask you, do you have a food scale at home? Please weigh and measure your food. It's not because we're trying to be the food police. It's because we're just trying to get you to retrain how you see food and learn what an appropriate portion is. Yeah. It's too easy to order the extra large size. Yeah, for sure, because it's another great point, right? People are just, they're used to being offered that option. Do you want to, you want to upsize it, or hey, for an extra 50 cents, we can add this to it. Kathy, you make a good point. A serving size is much smaller than we think. Serving size in a box of cereal can be a half a cup when the bowl holds 2 cups. Really great point. And we're going to talk about that, the visualization, how our eyes can play tricks on us based on what we eat food off of and the size of that. So that's a really great point, and I think you're going to get a kick out of the visuals I have to show you about that. But some other things I wanted to point out with regard to why people have such a difficult time understanding it is restaurants offer extras like breads, chips, and other appetizers. Many times they'll just offer them free with an entree, right? So we just gotten used to eating all those extra carbs before we've even gotten to the meal. Some meals actually have portions, at most, I would say, that are enough for at least 2 people, if not more. And I think many convenience foods and drinks are priced lower but packaged in larger sizes to sell more. So how many of you have gone to a place like Sheetz, and it's so easy to get, 64 ounces of soda for, $1 or something. I mean, I don't know, I don't buy that stuff, but you know what I mean. It's pretty cheap. And people want bang for their buck. I see something coming through. Our stomachs are stretched out and we want more to feel full. Well, great point again, Kathy. We've learned to eat past the pain, and that's something else. First of all, eating shouldn't be painful. And second of all, we don't want to eat to the point of pain and discomfort. And again, that's about readjusting that lens. And those are things that we talk about here in the clinic all the time, just readjusting the lens. And it takes time. Great points, guys. All right, let's look at this. The Clean Plate Club. I'm sure many, if not all of you, this is looking familiar. We all know about it. And what this is saying, it's 92% Clean Plate Club. We eat almost all of what we serve ourselves. 92% is eaten. So after analyzing, from almost 1,200 people, right? Researchers found that adults tend to eat 92% of what they're served at meals. Does this surprise anybody? Put it down and we will eat it. And one of the things they're saying there is to use smaller plates to serve and eat less food. So basically what researchers found is that if we serve it, we will eat it. And mostly that's because we already know ahead of time how much of a given food we want to eat. By the time it's on our plate, we already know. And if you think about it, I mean, even thinking back to when you were a kid, if, your mom or dad put down, they were serving, like, say, Brussels sprouts, and that's, most little kids don't like Brussels sprouts. Personally, I love them now. As a child, I hated them. But yeah, if my mom put down some kind of weird vegetable that I wasn't used to or I didn't like just by looking at it, I already knew. I don't care if it's on the plate. I'm not eating that, or I'll maybe take a bite of it. But if she put down something that I really like mashed potatoes, I know I'm going to be eating that and probably going for seconds. So this whole thing about the Clean Plate Club, there is a psychology behind it. That if it is a food that we like, we already know whether we're going to be eating it and how much we're going to be eating of it. That's basically what this slide says. Okay. Now, this one goes to small plates lose weight. So, first off, you can tell these plates are not the same size. And this was another study that Cornell, these come from the Cornell Food Lab. And this one shows this illusion of basically how the plate size can kind of trick our eye. So if you look, what's the main difference you see between the larger plate and the smaller plate with regard to food? What do we notice right off the bat? Looks like more food. Looks like more food on which plate? The smaller plate has more food. Okay. Anything else you notice? 2 pieces of salmon on which plate? The larger one. So what would you say about, what could we say as a general rule here based on what we see regarding plate size? So the bigger the plate, how does that impact the food we put on it? The larger the plate? The more we tend to put on it. Ding, 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 ding. Yes, we have a winner. That is correct. So this is about the psychology of food. And it says that as human beings, when we have something bigger, an eating vessel that is large, we tend to want to fill it. When we have a smaller eating vessel, we still fill it, but because it's smaller, we're naturally going to put less food on it, right? And this bears it out. So we tend to do that, although I do notice that the amount of non-starchy vegetable we have on there, in this case in the form of asparagus, seems to remain the same. I'm not sure why that is, but shame, shame. But in general, you guys get it. The rule of thumb is that if we have a bigger space, then we need to fill it, which means we need to put more on it. But this is not always conducive to weight maintenance or weight loss. So something else to keep in mind. All right. So let's talk a little bit about why we overeat. And I'm not being flip when I say this first one, because we can. It is because we can. Now, there are 2 systems that govern decision making here. One is called the limbic. All right, the limbic is our subconscious. It's the emotional part of our brains, and it relies on present opportunity. So it's all about, the limbic is all about the here and the now. And then we have what we call the analytic, which weighs the courses of actions more consciously. So that's kind of, the analytic is where we think about things first. Now, most of us know we're going to have enough food to eat in the next few months, but rational thought is frequently overridden by the limbic's way of me now, got to have now type of thinking, right? So we are products actually of both systems, plus all sorts of cultural influences as well. Now, I thought that you get a kick out of this, but it also teaches us a lot. So if we look at this first cartoon, where there's somebody sitting at their desk, and you can see there's something on the shelf behind their head, and there's something on their desk, which is within arm's reach. People take twice as many candies when they're on the desk than when they're 6 feet away. Why do you think that's true? And it is true. Why? And what would be the benefit? If it's candy or it's fruit or it's anything. I don't, I mean, candy's easy pickings, but what are your thoughts on that? Why is this true, and why would we want to do that or not do it? right? Lynn, closer availability. So easy access. And if it's easily accessible, are we more likely or less likely to indulge? More likely. Good. Kathy, you're saying close, we just grab it, right? Not as convenient if we have to get up. Right. So I'm kind of thinking, and this is one of those like out of sight, out of mind kind of things, right? So when you're talking about a food of concern, as we'll call it, and candy would be considered one of those foods of concern. Yeah, out of sight, out of mind, like the one that's 6 feet away and behind her head, is probably, a better option if, rather than having it completely out of the room, than if you have it, a foot in front of you and within arm's reach, for the obvious reasons, because if it's there, we're going to take it, right? We're more likely. It's very difficult to just kind of disengage from something that's sitting right in front of you, especially when it's something tempting and it's something that you like, to just ignore it, right? The other thing, if you look at the other cartoon, it says tall glasses make everyone pour 30% less. So basically, this is another one of those weird visuals when if you look at the left-hand picture where the girl is kind of just pouring in these short, wide glasses, you notice that she's filling it right to the top. And when you look to the right, and the guy has that tall, slender glass, he tends not to fill it to the top. He's just putting a much smaller portion in. So again, this is about the eye, and they hold the same amount of ounces, but because they're distributed somewhat differently, we perceive it as more or less, depending on how it's distributed. So when it's nice and long and slender, we perceive less. When it is short and wide, we perceive more, and we pour accordingly. All right, let's take a look at this one. I think this is funny. So descriptive labels increase sales by 27%, and they make food taste better. So if you look at what's going on here, there's the heavier set gentleman who has this piece of cake, and very fancy. It says Belgian Black Forest double chocolate cake. Sounds fabulous. And this guy's like, oh, this tastes great, but boy, am I full. And then you have the little schleppy guy over there who's much more slender, and his just says chocolate cake. And then you got the waiter in the background that has one cake, and it says, and he's saying, if they only knew they're eating the same thing. And here's this poor guy that just has the very nondescript chocolate cake who says, mine was just okay and I'm still hungry. So there's this perception that, when you have this anticipation, and part of that anticipatory process is the labeling of something. Oh, this Belgian Black Forest double chocolate cake, it sounds fabulous. Already in our minds, we're getting excited that it's going to be something that tastes so fabulous, I'm just going to be rolling over in joy. And then you have the guy in the background who's like, oh, chocolate cake, and he's still hungry. And it was meh. So, our minds can kind of play tricks on us based on even something as simple as marketing, which actually is not simple, it's quite complex, and there's definitely an art form to it. And that's how food manufacturers trick us into buying things. But keep that in mind when you're out or when you're just shopping for food. Descriptive labels and pictures and colors, all that goes into marketing and packaging can increase sales by 27%. And even our perception of how that food tastes can increase or decrease based on all those visual cues. All right, so let's talk about a few tips and strategies. Out of sight, out of mind. Vary locations for temptation food. So like we saw with that candy bowl, right? I think, an example, a good and bad example, if you will. So a bad example is when you have those temptation foods like the candy and having it at arm's length away or having it 6 feet away, or better yet, just not having it in the room at all with you. And then you have something like water, which we talk about all the time, hydration and water intake. And the same rule applies, out of sight, out of mind, right? I can't tell you how many patients I've spoken to that when there is a hydration issue, the first thing I'll say to them is, well, out of sight, out of mind, you need to make that your new best friend and have that container of water sitting at your desk or sitting nearby when you're in the car, put it in the cup holder, because that's, as long as it's staring you in the face and it's there, you're going to drink it. If it's in your bag or you left it on your desk or you left it at home or you just, threw it in the back seat, you're not going to drink it. I'm not going to flip to the back seat when the light is red to go get my water bottle, but if it's sitting next to me in the cup holder, you betcha I'm going to be drinking it. Or if it's on my desk, you bet I'm going to be drinking more water during the day. So it's those kinds of strategies that can make all the difference with regard to intake and the quality of intake. When we're eating out, split an entree, or better yet, ask for a to-go box and wrap up half your meal as soon as it's brought to the table. I cannot tell you how many times even the most tenacious, strong-willed individual, if they sit there and say, I'm just going to eat half and I'll leave half to take home when I'm done, 9 times out of 10, when they finish that first half, they start picking at it. And before you know it, it's all gone. But if it's gone right away, you cut it in half, you perceive what you're eating as more satiating, more filling for you. It's just a mind shift, and it has to do with how we see food. Once again, I will be satisfied. I have this portion on my plate. That's what I'm going to be satisfied with, and that's the message half the time we send ourselves when we do this. Just get rid of half right away. Portion control at home. Serve food on individual plates instead of putting serving dishes on the table. I mean, I know that family style is nice, it's fun, it's casual, but it also can tend to have things kind of go sideways with double or triple servings of things. So in order to help keep things in check, it's better to just portion out on individual plates. 9 times out of 10, you'll be like, all right, this is what I get. This is how I'm going to enjoy it. And then one and done. All right, some more tips and strategies. So don't eat straight from the package. Portion out in snack bags or bowls to avoid overeating. You can increase the amount of food that you take in by 20 to 30% when you eat straight from the package, because we just keep doing that until we hit the bottom of the bag, right? So never good to eat out of a large bag. Break it up and put them in snack bags. Again, it's about you visualizing what you have and being satisfied, and in your head you're actually sending yourself a message. I'm good with this. This is my allotment and I'm good. Replace 12-inch plates with 10-inch plates, and you'll decrease your intake by 22%. If you go home and take a look at your plates, if you put a ruler to it, most of them are 12 inches. I don't know where to find a 10-inch plate. I remember I was out one weekend, and I wanted to buy new dishware, and I could not find, outside of that Corel stuff, I couldn't find a 10-inch plate, dinner plate. Everything was 12 inches or 11 inches. But that just makes it all the more important that we are strategic and intentional with what we're putting on our plates, because we're not looking to fill that plate up. They are too big, and that will lead to oversized portions and overeating. Okay? And then I just want to mention something called the 20% rule. You can dish out 20% less than you think you might want to eat before you start, and you'll be fine. Because researchers have found that most people can remove what would be tantamount to, I mean, they don't know it, but it turns out to be 20%, and feel like, yeah, I can take that, I can remove that much from my plate, and I'm still okay. I still feel like I'm not cheating myself or leaving myself hungry. But at 30% people, that's where it's like, now I feel like I'm taking too much food away. So 20% seems to kind of be the threshold that most folks can live with, saying, I can take this much off my plate and still be okay. All right. Now, with glasses, like you saw in that little cartoon, we said think slender, because the ones that are tall and slender, as opposed to the ones that are short and wide, we pour 30% less in the slender glass than we do in the ones that are shorter and wider. And a reminder here, let's be mindful that it's important to work with all of your care providers to see how best you can incorporate this information and these strategies into your current plan. These are general tips and strategies. Some may apply to more than others, but in general, we want to just kind of think about this, and then, of course, talking to your individual providers for anything that you want to change, just to make sure that that's going to work for you and be in your best interest. Oops. So at this point, does anybody have any questions? Because that's really kind of what I wanted to cover with you guys. Oh, hey, Kim, I saw what you wrote. You use salad plates as dinner plates now. You know what? I think that's great, because most of the time they're about 10 inches. They used to be about 6, and now they're a small dinner plate, which is actually a normal-sized dinner plate, so great point. Okay. Well, if you guys don't have any more questions for me, then I'm really glad you all came. I thank you. Make sure that you do the survey on the way out of logging into this thing. I'll bring that up. And get your PERCA points, okay? So thank you so much for attending, and you guys have a great week.